President Buhari in Mecca ahead of the summit of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation (OIC).
It's like another mini United Nations, if you like. It has nothing to do with imposition of religious views.
Federal government celebrates 83-year-old Chief Imam as an exemplary religious leader and ambassador of peace.
By this singular act, or just, an act that puts his life on the line, I think he's done, he's said it all.
Senate confirms Musa Abubakar Sadiq as president of the Federal Capital Territory Customary Court of Appeal.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on 20 years of uninterrupted democracy in Nigeria.
After over 3 cumulative decades of military rule, Nigeria returned to democratic governance on May 29, 1999.
And since then, the country has had 5 cycles of general elections to determine who governs the country at the federal and state levels.
And Nigeria's current democratic experience is by far the longest since independence in 1960. In the First Republic, which came with independence, civil rule lasted for less than 6 years.
All right, Kieran, and of course you know that it's a matter, as we have often said on the program, it's a matter of convenience that we say that the First Republic kicked off in 1960. We didn't become a republic until October 1, 1963, exactly. Actually, but it's a matter of convenience that we say from 1960. But of course, Nigeria has had a checkered democratic history, as it were, since the collapse of the First Republic. The Second Republic was even shorter than the First Republic, lasting a mere 4 years and 3 months. That was the Shehu Shagari era, between 1979 and the end of 1983. And perhaps the most unstable era was during what is now referred to as the Third Republic, which was somewhat experimental, featuring military leaders and elected civilians in positions of authority and power under the military president, General Ibrahim Babangida. But that experiment, of course, lasted from January 1992 until November 1993.
Yeah, and I'm wondering whether it can also be referred as a Third Republic per se, because of the practice at the time. It was a kind of cantankerous kind of election arrangements then, where some persons were even banned from contesting the election. Sure. The governors then were merely chosen, by the people at the highest authority from Abuja. So it didn't necessarily represent a democratic approach.
Yeah, it wasn't democratic, but it's been often referred to as the Third Republic because we had elected representatives. And then if you recall also, the National Assembly had the so-called no-go areas on which they could not legislate.
So it was a diarchy.
That's right.
All right, but since the return to democracy in 1999, and in spite of the murky waters, democracy has survived in Nigeria with its torch burning bright. Yes, of course, the country has had 6 major general elections, with the 5th bringing in a government from the opposition party and an incumbent president losing election for the very first time.
And although some persons have complained about the shortcomings of democratic governance in different tiers of the administrations of the country, many strides have, however, been recorded since 1999, if you were to put the country under the microscope. There are challenges that continue to persist regardless.
All right. Well, notable among some of the achievements and challenges are the infrastructural projects going on in various sectors of the economy, which includes water, roads, health, rail development, and social intervention programs across the country. Significant strides have also been recorded in the anti-corruption crusade and war against insurgency.
And of course, since 1999, the country had always celebrated Democracy Day on the 29th of May. But last year, President Muhammadu Buhari declared that from this year, June 12 would be the new Democracy Day in honor of Chief MKO Abiola, who was presumed to have won the June 12, 1993 presidential election and has often been seen as a symbol of the democratic struggles in the country to usher in the instant republic.
And on May 29th, we're expecting an elaborate celebration of Democracy Day in Nigeria. June 12.
June 12.
June 12.
That's right.
All right, now 20 years on, how has democracy fared in Nigeria? What are the gains and the challenges? Our panel of guests will be taking a look at these issues on GMN. That's Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Kirian Umayo.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I join my colleague Kirian and also welcome you to the program being broadcast live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. As usual, we'll bring you complimentary segments, and these include newspaper review, business, and others. In the meantime, let's begin the news highlights, and here is Chimobi Watanaji. Good morning, Chimobi.
Good morning, Kingsley and Kirian, and good morning. Welcome to the morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari is in Mecca, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, ahead of the summit of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC. The summit, 14th in its series to be attended by all heads of states and governments of member countries, is being hosted by Saudi monarch King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud.
In OIC today, there is representation by virtually all the major countries of the world, including the United Nations and the EU, with ambassadors and all of that. And so therefore, it's like another mini United Nations, if you like. It has nothing to do with imposition of religious views. Nigeria representation is made up of Muslims and Christians. On the table to be seated for these discussions, there will be Muslim nations, there will be non-Muslim nations. So nobody would come and do things that will hurt their own population. I think that in our country we have a peculiar problem, suspicions run deep. President Muhammadu Buhari will preoccupy himself with seeking the best opportunities for Nigeria.
In a related development, the Council of Ministers of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, has met in Jeddah, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, ahead of the meeting of the Council of Heads of States and Government. The Nigerian delegation was led by former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Jeffrey Onyama, and the Permanent Secretary at the Ministry, Ambassador Mustafa Suleiman. They speak on the agenda of the summit and expectations.
And it's an organization that's dedicated to, it's a multilateral organization dedicated to promotion of development and peace globally around the world, and in particular in the member countries.
Now the expectation all the time is that such forum will address these global issues as they relate to member states, and try to define a framework for addressing such issues for both member nations and and globally also.
Away from the OIC, barely 36 hours after his inauguration for a second term of office, President Muhammadu Buhari has returned to the Grand Kaaba in the holy city Mecca. His mission not only to intercede for Nigeria, but also seek divine guidance in the execution of his mandate for a secured, peaceful, united, and prosperous Nigeria. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has expressed gratitude to Nigerians for the trust reposed in the President and his team. The Vice President at the inauguration gala night held at the State House Conference Hall in Abuja reiterated the administration's commitment to good governance.
The beauty of democracy is the orderly and civilized process of transition. But perhaps more importantly is the sanctity of and respect for the will of the people and the choice of the people. On February 23rd, the Nigerian people freely made a choice to re-elect President Muhammadu Buhari for a second term in office. It was that choice that we celebrated with pomp and pageantry this morning. We are grateful to the Almighty God for the grace by which this was made possible, and the Nigerian people for trusting us yet again. That trust will not be betrayed.
in another development, at 83, Chief Imam of Nga village in Barkaladi local government area of Plateau State, Abdullahi Abubakar, has become a hero, and he is being celebrated by the federal government as an example of good religious leader and ambassador of peace. Imam Abdullahi Abubakar, who demonstrated a courageous act to save over 300 people during an attack on his village in June 2018, is also being recognized internationally.
Compelling stories of the love that one individual can show, not just for other human beings, but especially because they are not even persons of his own faith or persons of his own tribe. You know, in a society where tribe and religion usually play such a prominent part in how we relate to each other.
We'll now turn our attention to the legislature, where the Senate has confirmed the nomination of Musa Abubakar Sadiq as President of the Federal Capital Territory Customary Court of Appeal.
That's what we always advise, that whenever Mr. President is bringing nominee or nominees to us, there should be proper background checks, especially in respect to the suitability of such a nominee or such nominees.
And on the lower house, the House of Representatives yesterday held its last plenary for the 8th Assembly in what could be described as a marathon legislative sitting.
We invited all the parties, NMPC the 9th, representing the federal government.
This executive order targets only legal guns, and there doesn't seem to be any actionable plan that targets the guns in the hands of criminals.
With the industrial to commercial hub of Anambra State and Nigeria is under serious ecological threat, occasioned by heavy gully erosion, which has cut off the major entrance to the market.
Honorable colleagues, this will mark the last sitting of the 8th Assembly.
And that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Kirin just after the break. Stay with us.
Well, we thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Now, let's go business. African Union envisages boost in intra-African trade by 60% by the year 2022 through elimination of tariff as China accuses U.S. of fueling trade war. Let's now join Kunle Adeye for details.
The African Union hopes a progressive elimination of tariffs will help boost intra-African trade by 60% by the year 2022. The initiative, African Union hopes, will be a continent-wide market of 1.2 billion people worth $2.5 trillion. The agreement's operational phase is to be launched on July 7 at an AU summit in Republic of Niger. There are still a number of outstanding issues to be resolved, including arbitration measures, certifying the origin of goods, tackling corruption, and improving infrastructure. 52 of the AU's 55 member states have signed the agreement to establish the free trade area since March 2018, with the notable exception of Nigeria, the largest economy on the continent. Other leading economies like Ethiopia, Kenya, Egypt, and South Africa are among the 24 nations that have formally ratified it. Some economists are of the view that Africa is largely ignored in the US-China trade war that could rock the world economy and could also affect the free trade initiative. And China has accused the United States of America of fueling a trade war. The world's leading economies are at loggerheads as trade talks have apparently stalled, with the US President Donald Trump hiking tariffs on Chinese goods earlier this month. China has hit back with its own tariff increase that will take effect from June 1. And let's see how tradings went on Thursday on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
All right, Kunle, thank you very much for the business package on Good Morning Nigeria. Next for us, we'll take a look at the front pages of some of today's newspapers.
Bayo Atayebi, our newspaper reviewer, is here with us again, as always. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kira. Good morning. Good morning, Kisley. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Bayo, good to see you.
About 5 of them here.
Yeah, let's begin with you.
Okay, the Sun newspaper, Daily Sun newspaper, just by the right-hand side of the nameplate. More troubles for Shomole. With the rider, APC chieftains insist he must go. It's on page 4. And let's get down to the lead story on the Daily Sun this morning. 24 hours after inauguration, new governors in stormy start with 4 riders. Sanwo-Olu signs executive order on refuse traffic management in Lagos. Ihedioha House stops all financial transactions amid controversy over demolition of Akachi Monument in Imo. And then Yobe governor takes another wife after oath. Then ripples over local government bosses sack. Argon kicks in Oyo. It's on pages 6 and 43. And just on the right-hand side of the photo story on the Daily Sun, we have other stories there. 9th Senate, Mark Ekweremadu lead Lawan Ndume lobby teams with a rider Urobo Group endorses Kalu for Deputy Senate President. It's on page 39. Sit at home, total partial compliance in Southeast cities. Schools, markets, banks short. On page 41. Boko Haram. NGOs supplying food, drugs to terrorists. Army alleges is on page 4. And the foot of the Daily Sun. Reps urge Buhari to rescind executive order on firearms. The full story is captured on pages 4 and 5.
All right, let's take a look at the front page of the Punch newspaper, beginning with the photo story, which is very elaborate on the front page. The photograph that shows the governor of Lagos State, Sanwo-Olu, and his deputy, Hamzat, during their visit to the Apapa Port area to get a first-hand update on the traffic and environmental situation, as well as relocation of trailers in Lagos. That took place yesterday, and that's the photograph there by the Punch newspaper. Sanwo-Olu orders road repairs and directs LASMA to work till 11 p.m. That's on page 6 in greater detail for the story. And then just below that, we'll take 3 headlines before we go to the top again. 5 fear dead as IPOB attacks Catholic priests and others in Anambra. Hoodlums in army uniform vandalize fuel pipeline in Lagos. And technical committee okays 124.3 billion naira bids for AFAM and Yola Disco. Details can be found on page 28. Now, 2 earpieces beside the nameplate of the Punch newspaper. We say suspected bandits kidnap Katsina Poly lecturer. Suspected bandits kidnap Katsina Poly lecturer. That's page 17. And on page 13, EFCC to arraign woman who blamed snake for missing 35 million naira JAMB funds. Then above that, we have other headlines. Senate flays federal government for spending 11 trillion naira on subsidy in 6 years. That's on page 25. Controversy surrounds attempted demolition of Okorocha's monument. That's pages 4 and 5. And some NGOs providing humanitarian support for Boko Haram, says Army. That story is on page 13. Bayo.
Well, news brooms, they say, sweeps well. The governors have hit the ground running, and some of them have actually started on a controversial note. One of such is in Oyo State, where the dissolution of the local government has been resisted by workers of the local government council. Also in Imo State, Akachi Towers, a tourist attraction and monument built by Rochas Okorocha, has been demolished. It was one of the structures commissioned by the Vice President a few days ago. The leadership reports that the demolition was supervised by soldiers who barred journalists from covering the demolition. The Akachi Towers was built on a reclaimed dump site previously abandoned. It was a massive tower described as a hand down of Zenith, representing the hand of God. The paper says other monuments like statues that dot the Imo State capital are likely to fall the same fate. There's the statue of Jacob Zuma and also the president of Ghana and a few others dotting the landscape in Owerri. It was meant to add some beauty to the city.
What calls to question is actually, what necessitated the men was being built, that statues are being raised in Imo State, the president of Ghana, that of South Africa, all of that. What impact, did they make in Imo State or in Nigeria to attract such thing in such a state? That's a matter of the questions that many Imolites, have been asking, even the time they were being erected. Before. So I think that's why they started on that note to see how they can remove all those statues there. People never welcomed that development from the outset.
Well, when you say that they are removing, who are the they now? That's the controversy. Now, the new governor, Emeka Ihedioha, says that through his aide, that's Steve Osuji, in a statement that was issued, that, look, the government doesn't have an office. The governor doesn't have the handover notes yet. So why would demolition of a statue be his first priority? That the government, had no hand in it whatsoever.
And nothing was done to stop it.
Well, that's, as Bayo said, there were soldiers in the vicinity. I'm sure that they will have to, but let's face it, it's public property in the first instance. So assuming that there was a malicious destruction of such public property, then it's an offense.
Yes.
It's an offense. So we'll find out in due course, what actually transpired. But if, as you said, Imolites have been dead against some of those statues, and those reports, of course, were also in the public space, the question will then be, maybe they want to just pull it down. In addition to this controversy, by the way, I'm sure you also read the rebuttal yesterday by the EFCC. Because there was a fake piece of news that went viral that Okorocha, his wife, had been arrested at some university in some location, had also been shut down by the EFCC. But the EFCC now issued a statement to say, look, Okorocha has not been taken in, and that's it. So, as you said, it's a new day and new controversies.
It's a new beginning in Imo and many other states.
One of the other controversies that was resolved was at the Court of Appeal yesterday, where the Court of Appeal, Abuja Division, ruled that Senator Ademola Adeleke possesses a requisite educational qualification to contest the governor's election in Osun. The judgment was unanimous by the 3 judges, and it overturned an Abuja High Court ruling, and which had voided Senator Ademola Adeleke's nomination. The judgment said the court held that his educational pursuit was up to school leaving level. It did not matter whether he passed or not. Furthermore, the Buhari court lacked jurisdiction to have entertained the case. Also at the Senate yesterday, the alarm was raised by the Senate leader and said the super rich in Nigeria tend to buy judgments, and that is to the detriment of the less privileged. The Senate leader, Ahmed Lawan, said that there's concern when the Senate considered the approval of the appointment of Justice Abubakar Sadiq as President, Customary Court of Appeal of FCT. He said, our society where people who have so much money buy judgments, we want a society where those at the lowest line, the vulnerable ones, the disadvantaged, can go to court and get judgment because they deserve it, regardless of their status. The Senate considered and confirmed the nominee.
Okay. Let's go to the Daily Trust newspaper and take some top stories on the front page. Daily Trust. Below the nameplate, court orders reinstatement of Guazo as SEC DG. APC, more calls for Shamale to resign. It's on page 13. And the lead story, SSG's others emerge as governors make first appointments. Buhari yet to announce any appointment. That's the rider to that lead story. And below the photograph here, Yobe Governor Wells Gedam's daughter, page 7. Senate okays a 129 billion naira subsidy payment to 67 oil marketers. It's on page 3. And experts expose ways to fund national carrier on page 16.
Okay, now we'll go to the Nigerian Pilot newspaper. Below that, you have the headline also on the court ordering the reinstatement of the suspended SEC DG, that's Guarzo. Details of that story can be found on page 5. On page 9, in greater detail, corruption, poverty, and unemployment threat to national security. That's attributed to the National Security Advisor. Senate slams federal government over fuel subsidy with 4 riders, says it paid 11 trillion naira in 6 years without National Assembly approval, warns that such action is dangerous to nation's economy, and approves fresh 129 billion naira to 67 oil marketers. Once 50 oil companies indicted for subsidy fraud sanctioned. Now, below the photograph there, you have other headlines. It says Nigerian Army warns NGOs against sabotage. Court grants musician Naira Marley 2 million naira bail over alleged fraud. And Energy Commission DG says 20 million houses have no energy. That's page 12. Senate kicks against alleged plan to downgrade Enugu Airport. And Senator Lawan, as Kirian read earlier, alleges rich Nigerians buy court judgments.
There's this human interest story. An 83-year-old Nigerian cleric, Imam Abdullahi Abubakar, has been hailed as a national hero. Vice President Shibaju described the Imam as his action as a wonderful act when a man offers his own life for those who are not people of his own tribe. It happened on June 23rd when over 200 persons were fleeing from killing bandits at Gindi Akwati village in Plateau State. Imam Abdullahi had rescued the fleeing Birom people, majority of who were Christians, and he was on his knees begging the attacking marauders, insisting that they would rather kill him than allow them kill the people that were taking refuge in. Professor Sibaju said his singular act did so much to promote peace than most politicians have done. Vice President urged politicians to avoid using religion and tribal sentiments to divide the people. His name is Abdullahi, and Abdullahi translates to the servant of God.
Yeah, yes. That's very heartwarming, the news from Plateau. Now, in addition to the exemplary conduct of the chief imam you just described, there is a community called Dadinkowa, also in Plateau. I think it's somewhere around the Jos area.
Jos metropolis, yes.
They have devised some peace-building mechanism that had worked for them for quite a number of years. And that was also being recommended for other parts of the country, where you have communal conflicts, flaring up from time to time. So there are things to study from Plateau. I mean, Plateau is not just the fact that it's a lovely location, but that has been drenched in blood in recent years. But that in all of this, there are instances of peace-building measures and peace-keeping efforts, by the community leaders themselves.
That Inkowa literally means the happiness for all. And so it's very instructive if such a recommendation is coming from that area. It's a peaceful, quiet area. I have had the opportunity of living in Jos. It's a place I loved. But unfortunately, these are the challenges we are having. It's the same thing Kaduna. Kaduna has always been a melting pot until the divisiveness came in, and then you had all this crisis, and the city was virtually divided into sectarian portions. Such examples must be folled to ensure that our unity is wedded together.
And in recent times, in the middle belt, there has been this these are historic, crises. It's been there for 50 years or more, and all that, and they happen more in the local government areas, in some local communities, right? So that's why it's becoming a bit difficult, to see how they can, come together on a peace table and make amends. Because of course, if you did not make amends, this will persist in that part of the country.
Kirian, I know you want to take the editorial now. Bayo, there's a story we read, Kirian and I took it from different papers, about the National Industrial Court ordering the reinstatement of the suspended Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Guarzo. You recall, of course, he was suspended, by the then Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun. What is of interest to me from the stories that we have read so far, I have not had the benefit of reading the entire judgment, but one aspect that I find a bit interesting is what His Lordship said in delivering his decision. He said that the minister has no authority to suspend the Director General, and that if there was to be any such suspension, it ought to come from the President,
the appointing authority,
through the Permanent Secretary, who would then, of course, send the letter communicate the letter. But SEC has no board. And in terms of governance in public service, you are familiar with this. In the absence of a board,
the minister,
the chief executive or the parastatal reports or seeks clearance or deals with the supervising ministry.
Yes.
In this case, through the permanent secretary to the minister. So how, you understand what I'm saying? So if SEC had no board at the material time, it was said, now his lordship has held that, no, you're supposed to deal, are you supposed to now get instructions from the president to the permanent secretary, and that the minister has no role? Whereas in the practice, in the governance in public service, in the absence of a board, it is the minister that you refer to.
Exactly, and one will also argue that the DGs are political appointments, from the way we operate in this country. So if the minister does not have the power to suspend a DG, both of them are the same political, level, exactly, in terms of tenure appointments, right? Then who do that? Is it a permanent secretary who is a career person who is running? So there is a...
that's what I said on the basis of what we have just read in the papers, without access to the fuller judgment. That's the point of curiosity for me. Because, I mean, it could be very important going forward in terms of relationships that parastatals have with their ministries in unpleasant circumstances that may warrant disciplinary measures in the interim against the head or any other officer.
I think we've agreed that we have lacunas here and there when it comes to law practice in Nigeria. It's okay now to the editorial for today, taken from the Nigerian Tribune. CBN's cap on banks' purchase of government bonds. Let me stop there, Bayo.
Yes, the editorial I think is by the Tribune. They're talking about the cap on government bonds. It may be recalled that at the MPF meeting of the central bank recently, the governor of central bank also made that pronouncement that banks must be weaned from treasury bills and government bonds that they are making money from. And the whole essence of it all is to ensure that they concentrate on the real sector stimulation so that they can enhance growth. And the editorial is saying that attention has to be looked, why is the banks concerned about treasury bills and other government bonds rather than concentrating on lending to the sectors. And the editorial is saying that it's because the productive sector is no longer productive, and therefore lending is so expensive and production costs have been so high that people don't find it very profitable. And he has also raised an alarm that money banks are likely to be in some temporary problems now because of the new detour. And it is the editorial is making recommendations that they should make lending a lot more easier and cheaper so that it will be attractive to encourage investment. And from all indications, at the end of the first quarter, already growth records had indicated about 2.1% increase, far ahead of the projection by the IMF and even the World Bank, even already in the first quarter. That shows that the potential for growth in the year could be higher. But like is always said, ordinary person is not seeing that growth in the ground. And that is the essence for which the central bank is enforcing that kind of directive so that that growth can lead to development.
All right, Bayo, thank you for being with us on the program today. We do hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and in particular, have a lovely weekend.
Thank you very much.
Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're taking a short break now. When we return, we continue, or rather, we'll begin our series now on 20 years of uninterrupted democracy in Nigeria.
The year 1999 will remain the watershed of Nigeria's uninterrupted democratic system of government, after years of interrupted democratic and consecutive military systems of government. This was the year former military head of state, Olusegun Okikiola Aremu Obasanjo, was sworn in as the president of Nigeria, serving 2 consecutive terms, bringing his government to an end in 2007. Umaru Musa Yar'Adua assumed the position after the age of 58, giving room to his deputy, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, to continue. The 2015 election was one that will never be forgotten in a hurry, as the then incumbent president, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, was unseated by President Muhammadu Buhari after a keenly contested election with the Change campaign under the All Progressives Congress (APC) party. And the election of President Buhari did not just witness the defeat of an incumbent president, but the ushering in of a new party, the All Progressives Congress, after defeating the People's Democratic Party (PDP), which had been in power for 16 years. The swearing-in of President Muhammadu Buhari on May 29, 2019, is the 6th inauguration the country has experienced after his victory in February 16, 2019.
We will continue to do our best.
What are you expecting from Nigerians?
To continue to give us the opportunity to be peaceful so that we can perform better with the limited resources available to us relative to our requirements.
No doubt, Nigeria experienced many challenges such as insurgency, poverty, economic challenges, industrial actions, inflation, kidnappings, even recession. But this would not take away the fact that many achievements were made in several areas, especially the agricultural sector, as part of the diversification of the economy, as well as the revival of some moribund projects such as the rail system. Now, what more are the expectations of the people from this administration as they commence the next level drive, and how has the government fared so far? Guests on NTA's Good Morning Nigeria will be answering these questions shortly.
And now joining us in the studio is Jidofo Adibe, a professor of political science and international relations, Nasarawa State University, Kefi. It's good to have you this morning on the program.
Thank you very much.
We also have Dr. Abuja Adeniyi of the Department of Mass Communication, Bayes University, Abuja. Thank you also for being here this morning.
My pleasure. Good morning, viewers.
All right. In fact, all the 4 guests that we have this morning are regular faces on Good Morning Nigeria. Let's welcome this time Adamu Modibo, a former governorship candidate in Adamawa State. Malam Adamu, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you for having me, Kingsley.
Okay. And also here with us is a lawyer, Esther Uzoma. Esther Uzoma, very well known face, is the co-convener of the Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room, usually very active during elections. Esther Uzoma, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Well, okay. Gentlemen and lady, it's our pleasure to welcome you to this edition of the program. Now, 20 years of uninterrupted democratic governance. We started out in 1999, and we saw the administration of former President Obasanjo, handed over to Yar'Adua, from that to Goodluck Jonathan, and today we are talking about President Muhammadu Buhari, who also started in 2015. Now, let's try and contextualize the leadership style of these leaders and the general political actions and inactions within this period, and see how far we have gone within this period of uninterrupted democracy in Nigeria. And I'd like to start with Adamu Modibo.
Yes, thank you very much, NT, and thank you very much, viewers. We are here to discuss, as you said, the uninterrupted, unbroken 20 years chain of democratic rule in Nigeria, and the experience so far, the challenges, the successes we have recorded, and so on. I think we have gone a very long way. This is the first time that we have had this length of time without having to break the trajectory of democratic rule in Nigeria. Our experience has also grown from when we started in 1999, this republic, when we started in 1999, and what we went through, particularly during elections in 2003, 2007, 2011, 2015, and now 2019. A lot of water has passed under the bridge, and overall, I can say that we have not done badly, but there are very serious areas that we have recorded successes and areas that we have not done very well. For example, if you look at elections, how do we conduct our elections? You can break that into two, the primary and the secondary elections. The primary elections are those that are conducted by the political parties to bring out candidates. The secondary election is the one conducted by INEC as the part of the general election. Being a participant since 2003, I ran in 2003 for the governorship of my state, and I went as a lawyer. I prepared my election petition. I went to the court. I won at the court of first instance. I lost at the court of appeal level, and court of appeal then was the highest you can go in the governorship election petition. The way elections were conducted around that time is so different from the way they are conducted today, mainly because INEC has done very well in terms of reforming the way we do elections. Literally, in 2003, incumbents or the powers that be can go and sit down in one house and write the results of an entire local government. You may not even have evidence to challenge that because of the way elections were conducted, the way the Electoral Act was the kind of provisions that you have in the Electoral Act, and that was why 2003, 2007 you had multiple election petition cases in court. Everything dragged on for a very long period of time, and from 2015 you had very little election petition cases, very little in terms of the number that were instituted in tribunals. This is mainly because INEC has reformed positively the way how elections are conducted. For instance, the introduction of the card reader has substantially reduced the ability of election riggers to rig elections. Even off-season elections, like Bayelsa, like Kogi, like Anambra, like Oshun, like Ekiti. These are all off-season elections. Even those ones, we had very little evidence of challenges. Even though one can argue that the ruling parties always use federal might to go and make sure they hijack those elections or they go and win them by force. But then procedurally, you find out that there is a lot of improvement. In the primary elections, on the other hand, we are deteriorating. When primaries were conducted in 1999 in Jos, for instance, for the PDP, it was well conducted. It was free and fair when Obasanjo emerged. The same thing in 2003. But from 2003 going forward, when ruling parties began to consolidate power, it became, for aspirants, more important to win the primaries than to win the general election, or more important to fight at the primaries than to fight at the general election to win. So primary elections now became the arena where the politicians go for the throat. The arena where it is a do or die affair. So there is a need here. There is a need here for the system to reform primary election process in Nigeria. And I always call on the National Assembly to widen the Electoral Act to interfere in the way how parties conduct their own primaries. Otherwise, you can never have peace in the political parties. When there is no peace in the political parties, you can never have free and fair election. Look at 2019. Because the APC was the ruling party, they were consolidating, having won election in 2015. Look at the way the primary elections were conducted, to the extent that some states even lost the chance of going for the election, like Zamfara. So all over the country, there was crisis within the parties during the primary process.
Okay, let me pause you at this point and get to Jido Fadibe, who is a professor of political science and international relations, National State University. How would you please Nigeria when you talk about our advancement so far in the political terrain from 1999 to date? How would you please Nigeria in all ramifications?
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, let me say that democracy is a process, it's a destination. I mean, it's a journey, not a destination. So, and another thing to be very mindful of is that in transitional democracies, those that are emerging from periods of autocracy, there will always be at the initial stage the tendency for bottled up feelings to be unleashed, which in the short to medium terms will aggravate the structures of conflicts. And that's what we've been noticing in both the primaries you mentioned and the militarization of the process. We believe that with time, if we're able to sustain it in the next, and put in the lessons we learned, if we're able to sustain the journey, then obviously the processes will become better, as my brother Modibo said. But also the leadership, the nature of the person in charge also more or less determines the character of the process. For example, if you look at when Obasanjo was in charge, Obasanjo was more interested, his leadership style was more like micromanaging. So he gets very interested in who is there, who is running for that, and takes interest in the minutest details. And that also affected the character. Sometimes he doesn't like your face, he will engineer your removal. Then you get to people like Jonathan, who was more or less at least seen as a gentleman, who being a politician but not in the mold of
And on that note, we conclude today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. We'd like to thank you for being part of it from beginning to the end. We'll return again on Monday. My name is Kirian Umayo.
And I'm Kingsley Osadola. Do have a wonderful weekend.